This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And as you all know, we talk about our journey through life and how we got to where we are today. And some of you on the outside listening in may think, well, wow, Karen, you just are a brainiac. You knew exactly what to do to make yourself happy. And the reality of it is, no, it was through a lot of trial and error. Today, my guest is Teresa Bitner. And when I read Teresa's bio, I knew that she could add a lot of light to this subject. Because as we go through life, Teresa, tell me if this is what happened to you when you're a very young child. You look around and you say, oh, this is who I want to be. This is where I'm going to live. This is who I'm going to marry, whatever. And then life continues to go on, and maybe those dreams change, or maybe something changes it for you. So am I hitting the nail on the head?
Yes, yeah. All kinds of change. Change is the only thing constant in life.
You're so right. And when we hear that, we sort of get angry about it. It's like, well, why can't things stay still just for a few minutes? And, they if they did, the reality is, listeners, we wouldn't be here breathing. So the reality of it is life is continuing to evolve. So, Teresa, tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got to be where you are today and what you are doing today.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me on the show. I am honored to be here. Yeah. So, gosh, and with that statement, the only constant is change. I use a metaphor when I talk to clients. Think about nature. Nature doesn't fight change. We're probably one of the few things that fight it. The trees lose their leaves, they grow new ones. So I have I think of a tree or maybe a moth or a butterfly that goes through the life stage. So listeners, think about that. Don't fight it so much. And guess what? You're changing even if you don't want to. Your skin's sloughing off.
Yeah.
So I always start out that my whole life shouted change. I just didn't really know that as a young kiddo. I was born and raised for some years in upstate New York and didn't really know that I was living in an alcoholic home. Didn't know that was not the norm. Thought everybody did. We're kind of loud, happy, fun family. And that was what I thought was normal. And then as I got older, I started knowing things are a little different in our family, but not, that was taught me my survival skills, I would say. Didn't teach me resiliency, but taught me survival. A major change came in life because I just thought, yeah, we were going to live there forever. My family had always lived there. That's the way it was going to be. And we moved from upstate to New York to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow,
And
big difference.
I was 13, not a fantastic age to move anyway in middle school. I call those my turbulent teen years started there. And with that, I was, smoking, drinking, cussing, because that's what we all did in New York. And the debutante lived next door. I was pretty sure that Satan had moved in and told everybody at the middle school. Not great. And as a family, my siblings had moved on. They're much older than me. So it was just me and my parents. And I will say that change, we did not survive and thrive well. My dad's alcohol abuse became more. I couldn't fit in, so I became a rebel without a clue and made very interesting choices and friends and acted out in all kinds of ways. Through all lots of counseling therapy and my own studies, I was really lost. I know that now. So things changed and it got to a point where it was kind of scary. I mean, there were times in middle school and high school that dad's like, hey, like if you don't stop, you're going to be dead. Like you're either going to be great or you're going to be dead. I don't know which one, but you're really scaring us. So, I mean, I kind of always knew like, okay, I was smart. I knew that. And I could like go to school on drugs, drunk, whatever, skip school, didn't matter. And I still made straight A's. It was one of the gifts I had, I think, because I had an advanced education and then it wasn't advanced where I was. So I survived that and kind of, sort of straightened up my act, sort of. I wouldn't say totally now that I'm at the wise 56 that I am now. And ended up going to school to get a computer science degree. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And I now run my own coaching business. Didn't know that's what I really wanted to do. But dad was like, nope, not paying for it. You like boys and money. Go get a computer science degree. This was in the 80s. Okay, fine. It was kind of easy for me, but I was the only female in a lot of classes. So
Right.
I learned really quickly how to be an advocate for myself and kind of fight for rights. And I didn't realize at that point I was kind of a pioneer for women. Didn't want to do that in the tech space. So got that, met my late husband there, and we I got a job offer in Austin, Texas. So we got married on Sunday, the Saturday before we had graduated from college, and then on Monday we moved from Charlotte to Austin.
Wow.
I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. About 6 months after that, we like woke up and like, what happened? Our whole lives just changed. And that was the beginning of a high tech career for me. And I worked as a software developer, then a project manager, program manager, and executive. And all that time, I don't know if any of your listeners or you are familiar with The Shame That Binds You book.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, I was living the perfect, air quotes, perfect persona that I thought I needed to be: the perfect wife, perfect employee, perfect mother. And I would very happily admit to being, Wonder Woman with her crunchy burned off cake because I burned myself out and I was sick all the time. And that I did that for about 16 years. And there were some health scares, and the doctor's like, "You're not having a heart attack. It's called a panic attack, and you will die if you don't lower your stress." I was like, whatever, just give me some drugs. um, but a few epiphany moments happened. My son was going to school, and I was bragging to him on the computer that I had two headsets with two phones and another conversation going on the computer. And he just looked at me. He's like, "That's dumb, Mom." I was like, "That is dumb." That's all I could think of all day. Is like, he is so right. So some other moments happened, and I was putting together a promotion package to go be a director, and decided I'd resign instead. I had my sixth pneumonia that year, and
Wow.
told the doctors, "Just give me drugs, man. We're going on spring break. We're going to Florida. Got to go." And he's like, "Honey, you need to be in the hospital." I'm like, "Ain't got no time. Let's go. Got to go." And kind of realized, the merry-go-round is not healthy. So resigned. Thought I'd be a stay-at-home mom. That didn't last very long. um, Started volunteering for school because I left the high tech world because I tried part time, I tried full time, I tried lots of different moldings to get through it. But it's like, I need to leave. This is toxic. I was in a particularly toxic environment. Not that they all are. For those in high tech, I love you all. And I just knew for me, I had to get out, and I wanted to spend more time with the kids because they were going into middle school. And I was like, oh, I got to be with them. So I became a middle school science teacher after volunteering. They're like, just go get certified. You're awesome. So I became a middle school science teacher. And I learned quickly that middle school kids and executives are kind of similar.
I love that comment.
They've, both cuss at you. Only one can throw a lab stool at you. It was great. Now, and I worked in a Title I school, and it was fantastic. I loved the teaching. I didn't love some of the things, and my heart goes out to the teachers
Right.
that are going out right now. But during that period of time, this is what I really found out: that I wasn't as resilient as I thought I was. I didn't really get grief like I thought I did, because when I was a manager, I had employees die and things happen. I'm like, oh, I had grandmothers die, aunts die, friends die, commit suicide. Like, I got grief. The second year of my teaching, my first husband was killed in a motorcycle accident. That it was the humdinger that took me all the way to the ground. I was always Little Miss It, the project manager. She has it together. That rocked our world. The boys at that time were freshmen and senior in high school. Horrible time to lose your dad. That period of time was, I won't lie, the first 2 years were horrible. I ate and drank my way through grief, one of many coping mechanisms out there. I don't recommend that for anybody. And it took a lot of work, both personally, faith, family, friends, good therapy, good counseling, some good medication. And I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I came back and realized I had to live for the kids. My first goal was to get them graduated from high school. Check. And then at some point, I was like, oh, I heard of this thing called coaching. So I went and got coached. I'm like, this is so cool. And my coach was like, you'd be really good at this. I was like, what? No way. So I kept teaching. I was in the middle of getting a master's in curriculum design and for instruction. And I was like, that's fun. And then I decided, you know what? I always did want to open my own business. I want to help people, be it when I was a manager and at work, I was a mentor. I did lots of women in tech mentoring and teaching. I mentored other teachers and kids. So I learned about coaching, went and got my certification. In 2014, I opened up Bold Fulfilled Life Coaching. So I have the honor of actually working with people who want to work with me now and helping people build resiliency, learn to get through those rough patches in life. Because it's not if, it's when. I always tell people, be ready, and build some resiliency skills. So that's a really long answer to, well, how did I
Well,
get to where I am today?
and Teresa, I love it, because many of us, when you ask about how we got to where we are today,
Mhm,
many will say, I have no idea. I've
mhm,
been searching for life, and, life is happening around me. And for myself, I didn't realize how many, and I look at it as different lives I've had in this lifetime. Um, and I thought I was the only one.
mhm,
And when I left corporate America about 10 years ago and realized that my situation was making me so ill that if I stayed, either I was going to be a burden on my husband and son, or I was going to die.
mm,
And I didn't have anything that tragically wrong with my body that I should die, other than, like you, I was trying to wear so many different hats, trying to be the perfect. And no one ever told me that there was no such thing as perfect. And so I kept trying harder and harder. Um, and so when I ended up sort of being pushed out of corporate America and leaving there, um, that's when I found my voice. It was, this is just not fair. I have put
mhm,
my heart and soul into my life and trying to make everybody else happy. And now I'm sitting here at around 6 years old saying, I don't have enough money to retire in 5 years. I really can't retire now. What can I do? And somebody said to me, well, Karen, you've been blogging for 10 years. Karen, you've been volunteering in other areas. Look what you did in your corporate job. And I had to actually sit down and hear everything that they said. And I put it on paper. And it was like,
mm.
wow, you've got a great resume. But when you send out that resume at 60 years old and they see everything you've done, they sort of read between the lines. And typically, you're not going to get hired. And so that's when I said, well, then I've got to do it for myself. If nobody else is going to hire me, I'm going to do it for myself. And that's what I'm hoping our listeners will hear. You went through so many tragedies in your life, found a way to swim upstream when most people would have said, how didn't she drown? Because just
Yeah.
listening, it was like, oh my God, like I would have drowned a half a dozen times. But I don't think that means that you are any more resilient than anyone else. It means that you just weren't ready to give into all the crap that had hit you.
No, no. Well, and it's in studying lots of resiliency, I think in some ways living in a chaotic home kind of gave me some skills that some don't. But resiliency is totally something you can learn.
Right.
And if you are mindful about it, you can plan and learn and deal with things. And it's a very much as an outlook, you know. Do you have something to look forward to? I always tell people, and I haven't, I have 3 autoimmune diseases. We could talk about that. I got to deal with I'm writing I have one memoir that I wrote about that journey, um, the death journey, and then I'm writing another memoir about dealing with elder care for your parents. So
A whole new journey for many
yeah,
of us. Yes.
another journey. But what I realized is that things are a season in life. And if you can look at this as like, this is a season in life, it's not forever, it can really help propel you forward. And you're right, I wasn't going to give up because I kept going, like, no, no. When I was widowed, I had this opportunity to go out to dinner with other widows. And there was another widow who was so excited to meet her. I'm like, yes, her husband was killed in a motorcycle accident. Yes, she's got two daughters. Oh, good, we can talk. She, many years later, was nasty, mean, like, oh, we're going to get that SOB. I still take my daughters to the parole meetings, la, 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 la. And I just walked out of there. I'm like, okay, God, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be a bitter, angry widower. I don't want to be defined by being a widow. And that was an epiphany moment for me to go, I have a choice here. I can go do that because I was pretty angry. I could certainly go do that. But I'm like, that's not me. No, I want to live again and be happy again and have joy. I know I can figure it out someday. And it took a while.
And and it's not easy. I mean, the
Mm-mm.
grief that you went through, first of all, it wasn't something expected. So now you have this unexpected incident
Mhm.
and now you're in grief. It sounds like your coping mechanisms um, weren't that great because you said, "Hey, I'm going to drink and whatever because I have to numb myself from what I'm
Oh, yeah.
feeling." And the reality of it is that probably, and not that grief ever totally goes away, but it probably extended the harsh, intense grief that you were going through because you numbed it, but you didn't experience it. Um, and I remember somebody telling me when my first niece died of uh, um, infant death. Um,
Mm.
everybody else was grieving, but I really didn't get that opportunity because there were my parents, there was my brother and sister-in-law, there were her parents, um, great grandparents, and you know, they were entitled to have their grief. As the youngest around, it was, help take care of them and soothe
Mm.
them. And it was many years later that I remember sitting down in the library at college, and I thought to myself, why do I feel like crying? I mean, I
Mm.
just wanted to cry my eyes out. Couldn't realize what had happened. And all of a sudden it dawned on me whatever I was reading that day in the library triggered. I haven't cried yet. I haven't felt her
Mm.
loss. And I remember going back to my dorm and saying something to my roommate. My roommate looked at me. And again, she probably had never experienced grief in her life at that point. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, Karen, get over it. Your
Ooh,
brother and
wrong
sister in law
words.
will have, another child someday, and then you'll have a niece or a nephew." And it was like, can you do that? And the reality is, we can't. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are things that happen in our life. So you bring a lot to your clients, obviously. You've seen it, you've lived it. Um, so when you decided to take these coaching classes,
Mhm.
um, was it more for you to get through, or did you say, I'm going to take these coaching classes because I'm now going to be the coach?
By that point, I made I actually interviewed other coaches, and I wanted to make sure I was, quote, as healed as I could be and as whole as I could be. And I did lots of therapy and counseling because lo and behold, when your husband dies, like, wow, there's nobody else to blame. All those problems, and when you
Yeah.
quit your jobs, then those problems still follow you. Well,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
so dealt with some of my own stuff to realize, okay, I have something special that I want to give to other people. So I went to the courses because anybody can be a coach. I wanted to be a professionally trained coach through the International Coaching Federation. So I'm like, I want to learn the skills. Plus, I'm an avid learner. That's another resiliency skill, learning. So I went and took the courses so that I would have the tools and could do this well for others. And I wanted, also wanted to learn all the neat things. And gosh, once I found the coaching world, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my people. These are my tribe. Finally, finally, I found them. Not that the other people weren't, but this is truly where I belong. Yeah, and for me, it's a great gift to just be there and allow people to share their stories because I don't want to talk about it. And there's no right way or wrong way to grieve. I want to let people know that there is, what they call the stages in air quotes, but it's not like 1 + 2 = 3. Yeah, and if I didn't talk much about the whole journey, but if you do want to read it, I do have a book. It's on Amazon. It's called Soul Love: How a Dog Taught Me to Breathe Again. And
Interesting.
yeah, I don't know if you're doing video or not, but
Oh,
there
we are
is,
absolutely
yeah,
soul love.
there.
I love it.
So that's my memoir. And people kept saying, "Oh, Tracy, you got to write your story. You got to write your story." I'm like, that is like the last blankety blank thing I want to write. But people kept asking me about it, so I wrote it. And the dog tells the parts I'm embarrassed about. Ooh, mommy smells funny. She's looking funny. Ooh, mommy and the boys are screaming at each other because it got ugly in the household. And it is what I call a visceral real tale of grief, not sugar coated. It's ugly. There's F bombs. It shows the ugliness, but it also shows a tale of hope. And the dog Hans he's a very sweet giant Doberman, and he tells
Oh, I
some of the
love it.
story. And there's some humor in there, and there's more of like, oh my God. And they're like, how could that happen? Because we had wildfires. I lived out on a ranch. I mean, there's some interesting things, but I will say I am remarried. The boys are grown. I have grandkids, and I am truly blessed that life has turned out as well as it has. But I think it all takes a lot of hard work.
It takes a lot of hard work, and you can't expect anybody else to do it for you. And that's the key. You know,
Hmm.
um, I am friends with another coach um, online, and she's had some really rough goings, just like you, just like me. But now her life is a lot smoother. Um, and so she's been documenting a trip that she's on with her second husband and her 2-year-old little boy, who is a gift from heaven. Um, and as you read her documentation online, um, you could shake your head and say, you know, I don't believe her. Look at, she's got money, she's traveling, she's doing all these wonderful things, and her life is perfect. And perfect is a fairy tale, and I think you and I
Hmm.
both know that. When you say you're blessed, you've got your great days, some that aren't so great, and other days that look fantastic. But you have to be mindful of what you're doing, and so do the people around you. And so yesterday, somebody had commented on one of her posts and they said, I wish you'd stop posting this because you are not the average woman who has, been betrayed, gone through all these terrible things. And all I could do was post back and say, you know what? 10 years ago, I would have written that too. I agree.
Mm,
Because I would have been jealous. But I
yeah.
have to look at what I do. I'm not, in Italy, doing all these beautiful things that she's showing off. But yesterday, I had a beautiful day. And yeah, I'm not posting it on Facebook because other people aren't going to see the beauty in it, but I write it down for myself. That
Mm,
was my beautiful day. And it doesn't need to take money, but other days I do spend the money to make it a little bit more beautiful. So for those of you who are out there listening, what Teresa has gone through, what I've gone through, we had to make the changes internally. We had to wake up and say, you know, I don't like who I've become, or I don't like what has happened to me along the way. How can I make those changes? And you obviously did. Whereas your other friend who lost a husband in a similar way is still very bitter, very angry.
mhm.
And that's sad because you can't get those days back. So let's talk about your so-called transformation. You started coaching.
Uh-huh.
Um, what was it like the first client that you coached? Now
Oh
that
my
you
gosh. Oh my gosh. I was nervous. I was worried about being good enough. And when you're coaching, it's not at all about the coach, it's all
Right.
about the client. Gosh, I'm trying to remember who was my first client. I should remember that. It's kind of a blur because I had a handful of first clients.
It's good.
Um, but I just remember when they were like, "Oh, that's a good question," or like, "Oh, I never thought about that." And the little changes they were able to implement, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm a freaking rock star." It's just like, this is so awesome. And I still get that, you know, the coaching conversation, it goes where the client wants it to go. And I show up and it's a magical thing that can happen for people when they have profound new awarenesses or they reach their magical goals they're after that they never could. And I'm a firm believer everybody needs a coach. I keep one on my bench. And sometimes it's accountability. uh, I work with some people on grief. It's some of my clients are getting new careers and off doing wonderful things. And it's to the point when you want to be coached and you allow someone to coach you. If there is, if you're ready or not everybody is, that amazing things can happen when you have someone team up with you and you partner together.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because 5 years ago, one of our first shows that we started here at New Cleveland Radio, um, is with a personal coach, and we are still going strong. In fact, when she started with me, she said, "You know, Karen, there's a lot of things I could talk about, but don't you think the listeners are gonna get bored?" And I said, "Well, we'll find out. Let's get going." And we have invited guests on, um, but typically I am her guinea pig, and that's what she calls me, which is absolutely fine. And we don't rehearse anything. And over the last 5 years, it's been so enlightening to me, um, because I keep waiting for her, and I know she'll never do it, but I keep waiting for her to say, um, well, don't do that. Instead, she'll say, "Is that what you want to do? Um, have you thought about any other way of doing it?" And it's like my whole life comes spilling out in her podcast. And I've gone back and I've listened and I can see the changes I've made. And
Mhm.
that's why when I started Avoid the Maze, I realized that the more coaches that we could talk to on this program, number one, we can find out that they bring their life history to the coaching table. It doesn't have to match each other. Okay. You can be a grief counselor and not have lost a husband, spouse, child. Your parents might still be living. Okay. But you have the empathy, you have the understanding. You're you're providing not only a shoulder for somebody to lean on, but as they lean, you sort of push them just slightly so that
Mhm.
they get moving in the direction that they want. And it is amazing. And but you have to want to do it. And that's
Right.
exactly what you said before. You have to
Mhm.
want to do it. So you've had many careers.
I have.
Um, and in some ways, I can see how they intertwine with each other. Number one, technology. If you didn't have a technology background of some sort, um, you know, you might have been afraid to, oh, I'm not going to want to use a computer. Oh, I don't want to use Zoom or FaceTime or whatever it is that I'm going to connect with. Um, so just that background has helped you as well, and you're probably further ahead than a lot of people, which probably helps on the technology side. And then teaching, and especially
Mm.
teaching young children, because the best teachers I ever had never really said no to me.
Mm.
They would ask me if I failed a test, you know, what were you thinking when you sat down to take the test today? And I'll never forget, I think I was in fourth or fifth grade, and teacher asked me that question. I looked up at her and I said, I was thinking I didn't get any sleep last night because I got in trouble and I cried all night. And
Mm.
she looked at me and she goes, "Did you study?" And I said, "I don't remember because I'm so tired.
Mm.
And she didn't say any more about it. But about a week later, she called me up to her desk as I was leaving class and she said, I want to ask you a few questions. And they were the questions on the test. And I thought she was going to ask me, about my dress, my books, who knew? And she started asking me the questions on the test. And I was answering one after another after another. And she said, I can't give you an A on that test, but I can give you a C. And I thought about it from that point forward. It's like, if I really can't do something, I need to be able to voice that to somebody.
Mhm.
And if I do poorly on something, I need to determine, do I take responsibility or is it somebody else's responsibility? And that's a hard lesson for us to learn. So much
Mhm.
easier to blame everybody else. Yeah. You, you could be blaming your parents right now. Well, I drank because I saw you drink, but yet there are other kids growing up in an alcoholic home and they never touch a drop. So you did take responsibility. So give me a little hint. Um, a client calls you, prospective client calls you.
Mhm.
How do you know if it's a good fit when they call?
Well, and typically what we'll do is I'll set up what I call it's more of a discovery session. It's basically, am I a right fit for you and are you a right fit for me? And we'll talk about like, hey, what's going on, problem to solve, what's your goals, what have you done to try that? I'll talk about my style, kind of what I do. And to me, it's an energetic thing. It's either a match or it's not. It might be, oh, yeah. And I also kind of ask, how ready are they? Because with coaching, if you're doing the deep work, it takes mental, emotional, physical space, and you want to have that space. And some people are like, you know what, you're awesome. I'm not willing to go that deep. Okay, when you are, let me know. Other people are like, yes, sign me up. We're ready to go. So it kind of depends. And, that's kind of what it looks like. It's one of those we figure out if, can I help you? And do you want to work with me? And
And
I'm a believer there's so many coaches out there, there's a right coach for you. If you don't find one or it's not a good match, no harm, no foul.
and and that's why I've become a coach advocate, because when individuals hear our podcast and they connect with me and they say, you know, I love Teresa's energy, but I'm not sure she's the right one for me. I'll go through my database and I'll say, okay, I'm going to give you 3 names. Okay.
Mhm.
Contact all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Find out if they are. Okay. And they'll say to me, well, why are you doing this? Because we all deserve to have the opportunity, whether it's to heal or just to start feeling much better about ourselves. And, if we can touch one person from every podcast, I mean, I would be elated. Um,
Yeah.
as I've said, I've always wanted to help people as well, but I wouldn't become a nurse because I'd be the worst nurse because I don't like the sight of my own blood, let alone somebody else's. Therefore, I couldn't become a doctor. Um, there was a time in my life I thought I wanted to become a social worker, um, until my best friend was um, doing an internship and she got beaten up by her client. And so it was like, you know what? No, I'm a
Mhm.
scaredy cat. Um, and I knew there were other ways that I could have done it, but I didn't really start doing it until I went to work for a college and um, I was meeting with students, helping them determine if they were a right fit. And I loved it. Um, and I know the college sometimes got mad at me because I had to tell them, this is not a good fit for you. And I could give them a whole list of things based on what they said. If they said I only have X amount of money to spend for classes and we were 10 times X, that was going to be number one because
Mhm.
why waste their time? Yes, could I show them ways that they could possibly afford it? They're still going to pay it back. So those were the things that I realized, hey, I don't have to be a nurse. I don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to be a therapist. Um, I can find other ways. And now we're doing it through podcasting and meeting people like yourself, which is terrific. So, before we end this, tell me a little bit what it was like for somebody who had been a grieving widow um, to actually go out and find love again.
Oh my Lanta, that was so hard. One of the, it's funny you should ask that. So I was in counseling and therapy, and I had forgotten at the beginning of our sessions. I told her I wanted to be able to love again, and so I had well-meaning friends say, "Hey, go get on," and I got on Match.com early on. Absolute disaster. I was 42 and he was killed. Absolute disaster. Like either they lived in their mother's basement or they wanted me to be their sugar mama or something. It was just gross. So, and I remember thinking, I was like, oh, so and so asked me, to go and do these meetups and go out with these singles. And she's like, what's wrong with that? I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to date. She's like, how are you going to find love again? I'm like, I don't want to find love again. She's like, I'm pretty sure that was one of your goals. So I kind of got ticked at her. She's like, well, just go try it. So a gal pal of mine had unfortunately been divorced. So we started going out, and just meeting people. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Because that was the first hard thing. Like, could I actually go out? I did online dating, and that's how I met my new husband. And I very much did not want to get married. That was not, I was going to find somebody to hang out with, travel with, go to music concerts. I live in Austin, Texas. It's a great place for that. And that was my goal. But the universe, God, whatever you believe in, had way different plans.
So, what you're telling our listeners is it's not easy.
Oh, no.
And, I've seen my two sons go through online dating, and I know it works for some people. In fact, I have a best friend who met his wife online, and they are the happiest and sweetest, wonderful couple I've ever met. But it doesn't work for everybody. But it is just one other option that people can go through. But you got to be careful what you tell people are your goals, because very, very nice of your therapist to remind you, wait a second, that was one of your goals.
It was. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't think I was, but I was never going to be ready. Yeah, and there's other ways to meet people. There's meetups. There's social groups, volunteering, things where you can do what you enjoy and you happen to meet other people. And you had mentioned about getting your voice out. It's so important. And if you want to help others, write, blog, talk to people, listen to them. There's so many good stories out there that I'm sure the listeners have as well and things they've been through. Share it. That's probably the biggest gift we can give to each other is share and not make it look like our lives are so perfect like social media.
Yeah.
No, we all have stuff. It's just what flavor stuff you have.
That is so, so true. My brother made sure I knew of that. Just about the time I was getting out of the college, he just gave it to me between the eyes. It was a Christmas day, and I was feeling sorry that we had no family around. It was my husband and my son. It felt like just any other day. And yet I was cooking and I had been cleaning, and when I kept saying it's like nobody told me to do that, but I did it. And it was about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I was curled up on my bed crying. And I pulled over my computer and I put something out on Facebook about, oh, woe is me. And my brother happened to be on Facebook. He saw it and he picked up the phone and he said, "You're not my sister if you wrote that. You've always been able to get through your struggles. Why would you put that out there?" And I said, "I just want somebody to make me happy like I make them happy." And he goes, "Then go make yourself happy. What would you like to do today?" I said, "I just want to do something." He said, "Then go to a movie. Movies are open on Christmas Day. Did you know that?" And I said, "I guess." And he goes, "Go find a movie." I wiped my tears. I went downstairs and said to my husband, "Do you want to go to a movie?" He was elated. He was bored out of his mind. And we went to the movies and we made that our new tradition. And, you know, when other people were saying around, oh, we were with the whole of the family, and my uncle Sid, he got drunk, and the babies were crying. I'm thinking, oh, it was so nice. We saw a great movie. We ate popcorn. We came home, and it's like you can do the simple things. You
Mhm.
don't have to have a Hallmark Christmas that really is not a Hallmark Christmas.
Yes, exactly. Well, and do it your way, you know.
Exactly.
Make new traditions. Just because mom did it, you don't have to do it, you
You
know.
are so right. So, Teresa, how can our listeners find you? Give us some hints.
Sure. I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Teresa, no H, Bitner, or Teresa Q Bitner. There is another Teresa Bitner out there. She's a realtor somewhere. Um, but you can also find me on my website, and that is boldfulfilledlifecoach.com. It's really long. If you've got links and you can put them in there, that's great. You can look for my books on Amazon. There's other ones that I've been a part of as well. So love to connect with you guys. Follow me on
Absolutely.
social media. I do tips on resiliency and motivational Mondays, and I give out journal prompts just to keep us thinking and moving forward.
That sounds wonderful. And for our listeners, everything will be in the show notes. So you don't have to worry. There will be a link to Teresa. You'll be able to contact her. You'll be able to purchase her book. And I just want to throw out one thing to all of our listeners. Authors don't make a lot of money on their books. However, whatever they make, it's really nice if we go out and purchase their books. And some of them can be purchased as an actual book, or I'm sure you have audio and
Mhm.
others as well. So for those of you who say, hey, I don't need any more books on my bookshelf, hey, take it in Audible, because I will tell you one thing. That's how I'm reading books today, because driving from client to client, it works out perfectly. I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your life with us and your coaching skills. And just want you to know we're going to have a new podcast starting in September on grief. And I'm going to have my crew who is putting it all together contact you, because I think you'd be a great influence on that show. So,
Wow. Well, thank you. Yeah, that is one of my specialties that I didn't plan for, but it happens to be. And thank you for having me on today. Lovely
absolutely.
conversation.
It was wonderful. Have a great day and take care.
Thank
Bye
you
bye
too.
now.